So I'm Shauna Harper of Pivot Magazine, and I'm excited to welcome you to the Pivot Magazine podcast show, where we love to share the stories of Canadian entrepreneurs at different stages of their business. For the last few months, we have been featuring different startup communities across Canada, and this month, our city is St. John's, and with us we have co-founder of Startup St. John's, Roger Power. Welcome, Roger.
Hey, thanks, Shauna. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So you're the co-founder with Jason James, right?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and you guys have, I guess, your big innovation week. So I know that he was setting that up. So unfortunately, we couldn't have him on the call as well. So from your profile, I found out that you're a technology startup investor and mentor. Is that why you kind of started the startup community?
Yeah, like for my background, I was actually working at university for about 10 years in technology commercialization. So this was, from the late 90s onward, and that was really a time when there was that sort of struggle for senior students to say, do I take a job or I have a great idea, will I pursue it? And slowly but surely, people started to say, well, I can get a job, when I kind of like, but an idea, and if the time has come for that idea, that's a really unique time. You have to, timing is everything with a lot of startups. So over my time there, I did see more senior students and people in the community start to use entrepreneurism as a real avenue, as a real valid way to pursue a living, to have a career, and to do something special.
And was that anything also due to, I'm not sure, what's the population of St. John's? Is that...
St. John's itself is about, the greater St. John's area is about 200,000.
Oh, so it's still pretty big, I mean, compared to what we are here.
Yeah.
So what do you think is unique about St. John's community, like business community? Do you guys see trends that are happening with the startups at all? Are they a lot of them tech?
Yes, certainly. Like a unique thing in this province as a whole are marine technologies. So, and they're not necessarily all tied to offshore oil and gas, which is pretty good thriving sector here now. But companies that serve basically a worldwide marine market. So we have companies that like Rudder International, for example, they do black boxes for ships.
Oh wow.
We have other companies that are serving oil and gas industries around the world. There was a company that a few months ago they were actually just acquired, but they were called Mad Rock, and their thing was lifeboat release systems. So just because of the nature, and we're a marine province, you're going to get a lot of technology companies that are into marine technologies. Mm-hmm. But as well, and like in most other jurisdictions that I've traveled to in Canada and in Europe as well, like software, web services and applications they're big everywhere pretty much, and it's really difficult to predict where the next great startup is going to come from based on those platforms. So we have a great university here. It's a large university, anywhere from about 12,000 students to 14,000, and engineering program, great business program, so computer science as well. So we do get a lot of startups really across the board. And it's also a very international university now, and that has come about probably only in the past decade, where there was a concerted effort to recruit students from around the world. So from like Asia, Europe, South America, it's really a United Nations type university. Yeah. And Shauna, what works there is that everybody's cross-pollinating and saying, I have a different perspective here, and that's cool when they develop technologies. But as well, when a technology is no good if you can't sell it. Mm-hmm. So almost immediately, like a lot of these guys and ladies have connections in the market, in the far-flung markets, yeah. And that's great when you're trying to validate your startup.
Especially because so many the really successful businesses need to look kind of globally. So when you have kind of that intermix of different people from all over, they're able to take a look at how can they expand globally. Like it's an automatic thing that they'll look at. So.
You really do, yeah. And there's a couple of startups I can think of. One is called Student Fresh, and they're mobilizing student expertise to sell into the community on their own platform. But like right now, there's one of the founders is here in St. John's getting ready for some demonstrations this week. His co-founders in the Middle East now. So, and obviously they're collaborating. There's another company called The Forgetful Chef, and it's pretty cool. So it's an app
Yeah.
that is a recipe app which has some great unique features, and he's co-working with his co-founders in Brazil. So
oh, wow.
that's
Yeah.
initially to me, I said, man, that's really cool that people are doing this, but it is normal. It's the way things are certainly happening. And it's just great to see because, as I say, you get different ideas and different skill sets. And our job, as as Startup Newfoundland and Labrador here, is just basically to help make those connections. A lot of time, people are working in their silos, literally in basements or in the dorm, and not knowing that other people are doing complementary work or could help on their startup. So our job is really to bring them all together.
Oh, fantastic. So how long have you guys been a startup community then?
Just over 2 years.
2 years, okay.
I had been traveling to other areas and saw startup hubs starting to pop up, and some in Canada and some in Europe, and like Dublin, for example, is a great startup scene there, in London as well. And I actually went to a meetup for startup web entrepreneurs in Paris, and it was okay. It was not bad, and it was a bit of socializing, a little bit of business talk. But I just thought we can do it so much better here. Just knowing like the great talent that is here. And so basically came back and we started just getting entrepreneurs together. And just after we had started up, so we're just over 2 years old now, and I think Startup Canada just celebrated its 2-year anniversary.
It's amazing how everyone kind of had this great idea all around the same time. So
yeah. And like I say, it's not an original idea. It's just this is what's been happening. And it's a natural phenomena in a sense than anything that Startup NL can do or Startup Canada can do to basically help facilitate those things. I think we help organize things, and that's sort of the old-fashioned networking.
Yep.
But it's powerful because a lot of the networks that are out there already are in a sense closed off, or in a sense are they're full of fuddy-duddies and it's boring and that sort of thing. So as you see, it's the startup community. The best thing about it, the most prevalent characteristic, is that it has this great vibe and it's fun. It's cool to be there, and I think that's why people just come out in droves.
Yeah, well, that sure makes a difference. So have you found, I guess, any growth challenges in your startup community over the last few years? And if so, how did you guys kind of overcome that?
We treat it as a startup, to be honest, and that's really helped us bootstrap and be smart in terms of resources that we put into it, in terms of manpower, money, and getting other organizations. We were always keen on forming partnerships with organizations that exist and obviously do have some resources and do want to help and collaborate. So there's an incubator at the university here called the Genesis Center. They've been great at helping us out. There's a technology industry association called NATI, and they've been wonderful for helping us if we want a venue. There's another grassroots group that formed around the time we came together, formed with their planning. It's called Common Ground. And what we had seen in other cities is, it's great to have a place. It's great to have a hub to work out of. So Common Ground and Startup NL are working very close together, and we're actually basically co-hosting their official opening tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so that'll be good because, again, it's great to do work in coffee shops, free Wi-Fi and all that. But in this case, it'll be a great co-working environment, and it's something that wasn't in the city before, and we're really glad to have it.
Yeah, it's nice to have a home base. We're still working on it here in Prince George. So how do you bring the startup community together? I noticed you guys have a fireside chat and kind of different events. What are your favorite events? Like, how do you guys rally up the community?
Yeah, like the meat and potatoes was really just the meetups. We do it about every 4 or 6 weeks, and that's it. It's a Startup NL meetup, and so people just come. There might be some door prizes, might be some drinks or munchies, but it is just that, and it's not not pretentious at all. We don't build it up, and that evolved to just people getting together and networking and peers talking about people kind of kicking the tires. Hey, why are you here? Oh yeah, I'm here because of this. Why are you here? And then when startups and entrepreneurs find themselves, they kind of say, yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one. So we listen to the community closely, and so after the meetups will always be, it's just a meeting, and we get about probably 50 or 60 people out at a time, Then we wanted to do events, so we had a startup weekend and in the fall, which was very good, and 3 startups from that actually are still going strong. And
oh wow, congrats!
Just about to they're working on the product and refining the product, I should say, because a lot of them have made great steps and getting ready to attract financing. So that's good. As you mentioned, tomorrow we have demo camp. So we have 5 local startups just showing off their wares, doing a show and tell. Our Fireside chat, we have some regional entrepreneurs coming in to stoke the fires and show people that this is a good thing to be doing. And then, overall, as an organization, we started in St. John's, but we quickly realized that St. John's being the commercial center for the province, so we now have basically a provincial scope where we do have Startup St. John's for sure, but we're going to be helping other communities form their own startup chapters, so to speak, and that really feeds into the Startup Canada agenda, I think.
Definitely. Because it's amazing when you talk about the simplicity of, I guess, those meetups and communities that haven't yet had a formalized community startup. They're almost overthinking it by trying to bring in all these different events when really, oftentimes, the seed of, most of the communities we've interviewed have been those meetups where just simply bringing in entrepreneurs that have never met before and them colliding and having that be kind of the seed that kind of sprouts into other things within the community. So
I agree, and you can put whatever label on it you like, but that's what it is. Just as long as you can spread the word, this is grassroots, and if you can spread the word through friendly social media and just word of mouth, then you get the type of people coming out that should come out. And then, the events we're doing tomorrow are basically speaker type events, but the 2 that we're really keen on, those are going to be just core things that we do. But we also want to be inclusive, bring people in from other sectors, the arts community, and getting engineers talking to musicians. Let's just see what happens. And I think really cool things are going to happen from that. And I think the other thing I'm keen on is, and Startup Canada can play a big role here, is a startup ambassador to make sure that if an entrepreneur from Winnipeg finds themselves in St. John's, we have a home for them, and we can give them local market intelligence, give them a place to work, and if they're really cool, we'll give them a place to stay.
Only if they're really cool.
But you know what I mean? Being able to, as Canadians, we're very inclusive, and we want to help each other. So I think that's a great thing. And if it's some people call it a visa, or I'm calling it an ambassador program, but just so you have a headquarters somewhere wherever you go in this country, because if you look at the map that Startup Canada put out a couple of days ago, it does show 15 plus hubs that are home. And I know when I travel, when I was in Winnipeg last, for example, I made a beeline for Ramp Up Manitoba.
Yeah, well, there's so much to learn from each of the different communities too. So you mentioned obviously the ambassador program, and you also talked a little bit about expanding into the rest of Newfoundland and Labrador. What is the vision for your startup community? Have you guys really thought about that in the next few years, what you'd like to kind of be churned out besides those 2 things? Those 2 things are already big in itself, but is there anything else that you might want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I see, the ability to obviously continue having things like the meetups and startup weekend. All of these things, they're not one-off. We do want to have them as regular, sort of annual or semi-annual affairs. One other part, we call it a solutions camp. Basically, what it's like. Some people might have a good idea, and then they see if there's a demand for it in the market. But a solutions camp more or less turns that around, and we bring in companies from industry and say, okay, you have a problem, and we want to help you solve that problem. And we have the entrepreneurs there, basically ready, willing, and able to accept that challenge. If we do it over a weekend, for example, a kind of a reverse startup weekend, then I think it's a great challenge to have. And, the innovation, and more than that, the creativity that people can apply to an actual problem, I think it will open some eyes of people that are actually in industry. So a lot of these things are not necessarily experimental, but good ideas that need to be tested.
Yeah.
And what better way to test it than, hey, let's just actually do it instead of planning it for 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I know that we interviewed Noah from Montreal, and he talked about a mashup, which is a similar thing. They took corporations and, larger companies within their community that, had a problem that needed to be solved, and they brought it to their startup community, and it would be this brainstorm of people pitching them on how to solve it. And so it's a very similar event. So obviously, great minds think alike.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, the startup communities in and of themselves are, like, nobody's going to say, hey, this was my idea, but it does reflect, what that demand is and what's going on. And, labels be damned. It's, as long as these things happen, I think is the main thing. I think the other thing, just to answer your question from earlier, what we really want to accomplish, next stage is really building out our coaching and mentor network. It's great to have all that energy up front when you're a startup, but it's great then to have, if you need a seasoned engineer or somebody who's well-versed in financing or somebody who just has great connections in an industry you want to go into, then that's great. So that takes a while to build up any sort of network like that, but it's certainly one of our major things in the upcoming year.
Oh, fantastic. So what are you kind of most proud of, I guess, in regards to your accomplishments in the startup community?
Well, for Jason and myself, it would be just on behalf of these entrepreneurs themselves, that they're actually doing it, they're sharing, which is a great sort of, it's a fringe benefit, but in the end, it's probably core to what this does. Like, people are telling, startup A is telling potential startup B their war stories. Here's what we had to go through, or here's the successes we had, or here's, you might want to keep this in mind. So it's really what the startups themselves are bringing to all of the events. And, I think Startup NL is just great to be happy to be part of that.
Oh, congrats. So our last question, I always like to kind of end with, what advice would you give kind of to existing startup communities that are perhaps newer than you, or maybe you haven't even formed yet, but are looking to get a group like this together? Any lessons that you would share, or anything that you would do differently, or advice you'd give them?
Differently, no. I think start before you probably think you're ready, because I'm telling you, startups now are sexy, and they've been sexy for a little while, but they may not be sexy in a couple of years. Mm-hmm. So take advantage of the environment now. The environment is very accepting of startups and risk and new ideas. Really, just do it. Obviously, plan a little bit, but really, that planning time can be measured in hours. I think if people just do it and basically then get the reaction of the community, they'll have their answer. The great thing now, Sean, is that you can do a lot of this. There's so many tools out now. Like, we used meetup.com for our first meetups, and I'm sure other communities have as well. So for $20 a month, you can really you can build a community now with all, obviously the online tools that are also available. You don't even have to think about it, because these things are there, they exist, and there's really no excuse just to do it. All you would really need is just have that core group of people that are willing to help form it, that will come out to the events and that will help seed, the local environment. Mm-hmm. I tell you, like, the startups are there, and people just need an excuse to come on out and talk to each other.
Yeah, so just get started. Good advice.
Starting startups. Yes.
Yeah. So that looks like that's all that we have time for today. Thank you so much, Roger, for your time. And we're definitely going to be keeping our eye on St. John's for sure, and the rest of, I guess, Newfoundland and Labrador. So thank you to all the Pivot listeners. And don't forget, you can always download an MP3 version of our podcast here and re-listen to it while you're at the gym or making dinner and on your drive home. And make sure you subscribe to Pivot, as this month we will be featuring some fantastic startup stories from St. John's as well as all over Canada.